At my son's graduation party, he stood up and shouted, "This success is mine, not yours." I just raised my glass. The next morning, he received a letter. He couldn't believe who signed it. People always say there are two kinds of moments at a party. The ones you pose for and the ones that hit you when the music dips and the room go quiet. If you're watching or reading this from your couch, your bus seat, your kitchen table, tell me in the comments where you are right now, because I want you to imagine you're standing beside me in that hall. The lights were warm and the air smelled like sugared frosting and roses and too much cologne. Laughter bounced off the ceiling. Glasses clinked. Somebody's little girl chased balloons past the dessert table. And then my son, my only son, pushed back his chair, stood up, raised his hand for silence, and said words that cut through the music like a blade. "This success is mine, not yours." He looked straight at me. The room turned its face toward us as if we were a screen and a scene had started. My fingers curled around the stem of my wine glass. I felt the skin of my palm turning damp, but my face stayed calm. People expected a storm, some thunder, some lightning. I gave them a small nod and the lift of a glass, a quiet cheers, like a man greeting the tide as it rolls over his shoes. Everyone looked from him to me and back again, waiting for smoke, waiting for fire. But smoke and fire are loud. Real hurt is quiet. It sits down beside you and says nothing at all. I had dressed carefully that evening. Old suit pressed. Polished shoes. Cufflinks my late wife, Amina, gave me on our 10th anniversary. Simple silver stones that catch light like a memory catches breath. My son's friends wore sleek suits that looked rented. The DJ played a loop of soft jazz under all the talking. On the stage, there was a banner with the university colors and a printed line that said, "Proud of you, Ethan," because that is my son's name. I had booked the whole months in advance. I paid for the cakes with my savings. I chose the photographs we hung along the back wall. Ethan as a toddler wearing a paper crown. Ethan at 7 with a missing tooth. Ethan at 12 carrying a school science trophy. Ethan at 18 holding a backpack too heavy for his shoulders. I knew when people saw those photos they would feel what I felt. Time standing like a ladder behind him, each rung worn and bright. I thought that ladder would make him grateful, or at least soft. I was wrong. He rose with a smooth movement like the hero of someone else's movie. He held his glass up high and said the line that made the music shrink to nothing. "This success is mine, not yours." He said it with a smile that tried to look kind, but could not hide the jagged pride inside it. He followed with a laugh and a shrug. "I did it by myself," he added. "No one got me here." His fiancée, her name is Lila, pressed her hand to his elbow and nodded like a coach agreeing with a good speech. I heard a chair scrape. I heard someone cough. I heard my own heart beat in my ears. I took a breath, tilted my glass, and let the wine touch my lips. I did not taste fruit or oak or anything. I tasted the past. You might be wondering how a father gets to this precise place. A step to the left of joy, a step to the right of grief, standing in a spotlight made of other people's eyes. I will tell you, but I will tell you slowly, because this is a story about patience, and how it either builds a house or burns it down. When Ethan was small, our house smelled like cardamom tea and laundry soap. Amina hummed while she cooked. She loved the little things, folding tiny socks, smoothing a school shirt, writing his name on a book's first page. She would whisper to him at night, "Be kind, be brave, be grateful." When she got sick, cancer that did not care how gently she hummed, the house learned a new silence. That year I worked in the mornings at the hardware store, and at night I drove late shifts for a car service. I slipped in 2-hour pockets like spare change in a jar. I read to Ethan from his textbooks while waiting for deliveries. I ironed his uniforms by the light of the stove. I learned to braid hair because Amina lost hers, and then asked me to braid the scarf for her just so, her smile small and tired and perfect. She made me promise one thing, the promise that sat like a stone in my chest and like a star in my pocket. "Whatever happens to me," she said, "carry him to his graduation. Let him stand where I could not. Make sure he knows he is loved, even when love feels like duty." After she died, the house lost color for a while. People came with food, with words, with that awkward looping sentence, "If there's anything I can do." I nodded and thanked them, and then I stood by the sink at 2 in the morning, washing the dishes they left behind. Ethan slept with his fist against his cheek, soft and open. He asked me once why I stayed up so late, and I told him the truth. I am paving a road for you. He was too young to understand what that meant. Roads are invisible when you're a child. You think the world just comes that way, flat, smooth, easy to walk on. I never mentioned the nights I counted coins before paying bills, the months I swallowed pride and asked the bank to wait, the times I told myself I could do one more double shift, just one more. I never told him I met with the university's scholarship office before he even applied. I never told him about the envelope I slid across the dean's desk, or the meetings that followed, or the quiet agreement that a donor's name could remain anonymous if he wished. I wished. I tell you all this not to paint myself like a saint. I have no halo. I am a man who made choices and payments and promises. I am a man who sometimes wanted to shout from rooftops that I was tired, that the world was heavy, that it is hard to be both father and mother and bank and clock. But I did not shout. I chose another sound, the sound of my shoes moving, one step in front of the other. A step to the grocery store, a step to the school, a step to the hardware store, a step to the car. Steps add up. That is something you only truly understand when you count them not by numbers but by blisters. So when Ethan declared his independence in front of that crowded hall, it was not anger that moved through me. Anger is a match. I have no need of fire that burns out fast. What moved through me was colder and older, something like a tide. I let it wash over, then passed. I did not speak. I raised my glass because there are moments when silence is the only language that does not make a fool of you. People say silence means defeat. That night it meant calculation. It meant faith in time. He went on with his speech, short and shiny. He thanked professors. He thanked friends. He said something about proving people wrong, about not needing anyone. He did not look at me when he said that last part. Maybe he thought he was protecting me from the blow. Maybe he thought I had not heard. But people always hear the words meant to vanish in the air. Words have a weight that finds you later. After the applause, I walked to him and hugged him. You might think that was difficult. It was not. Hugging your child is never difficult. It is remembering not to hold too long that hurts. Lila joined us, smelling of expensive perfume and impatience. We'll head out soon, she said brightly. A few of us are going to the rooftop place. She looked at me as if I were the coat on a chair that needed moving. Ethan shifted, embarrassed or pretending to be. He said, Dad, we'll catch you later, yeah? I smiled and told him to enjoy himself. The more I smiled, the more confused Lila looked, as if she had expected a different play with a louder ending. That is something about me that people have never learned fully. I never fight where I eat. I never fight where others can clap. There were whispers that night. An uncle murmured, he's young. He'll realize. A cousin said, the boy's just drunk on applause. Don't mind it. A neighbor pat my shoulder and said, kids these days. I nodded, accepted their words like paper towels handed to a man carrying a flood, and I helped the caterer stack plates. When the hall was empty except for the crew and me, I walked the perimeter once, collecting the frames with the photos I had chosen with such care. I wrapped them in tissue and placed them in a box. The janitor, sweeping confetti, asked, good party? I told him, it depends on the angle. I slept badly, and then I slept like stone. At dawn, light came through in narrow bands through the blinds and cut the room into neat slices. I boiled water. I ground coffee. I poured it black because sugar felt dishonest that morning. The house was quiet but not empty. No house with a memory like ours is ever empty. The doorbell rang at 9. The mailman, a big man with kind eyes, handed me a small stack. He likes to make jokes, but that day he only said, big night, huh? I smiled. The top of the stack held an envelope the color of cream, not white, not yellow, something in between, with a crest stamped in navy wax. My name was written on the front, and I knew the handwriting because I had seen it before on formal thank you cards and discreet memos. The handwriting of the dean's assistant. I did not open it right away. I let it sit beside my coffee while steam rose and vanished and rose and vanished again. I walked to the shelf where we keep the old things, the things that matter because they once sat in Amina's hands. The photo at the front shows Ethan at 7, standing next to a papier-mâché volcano, his grin wide and reckless. Behind the frame, a slip of paper, yellowing, with Amina's handwriting. Remember, we are building a road. I took the frame, placed it on the table, and set the envelope next to it. Then I opened the envelope with a small knife so the paper would not tear. The letter inside smelled faintly of ink and office and ceremony. I read it once silently, then again with my lips moving without sound, and then I held it by the top corner and smiled without teeth. The dean, in a careful formal tone, thanked the anonymous donor, me, for the scholarship that had supported Ethan through his final 2 years. He thanked the donor for fulfilling his pledge early so that the scholarship could continue under the donor's name for future students. He wrote that, as requested, the scholarship had continued in silence to prevent attention from burdening the student. He added a line in his own hand at the bottom, a gentle line. Your son has no idea, and perhaps that is by design. Congratulations to both of you. Below the dean's signature were 2 more signatures, the chair of the scholarship board. And because of a recent partnership between funders and the alumni office, the representative of a foundation that had matched my contributions. The foundation representative's name would mean nothing to most people, but to our city it was a net that caught dreams. People heard it and stood a little taller. I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into its jacket, and took a long breath that felt like finishing a race. Now, here is where many stories like to turn loud. They like to shout truth in a crowded room and make villains tremble on cue. I prefer something quieter. I called Ethan. I told him to come by for breakfast because pancakes taste better the morning after victory. He grunted, a sound that meant maybe and also meant later. Lila, on a second line, sent a message. We'll swing by, quick. I set the table anyway. I warmed syrup in a pot so it would not be cold against the cakes. I sliced strawberries the way Amina used to, with the tops still clinging like small crowns. When they arrived, their eyes were red, but not from crying. Lila wore sunglasses and a smile that did not include me. Ethan hugged me in the doorway, quick, as if afraid I would soak him like rain. He said, some night, right? I nodded and said, you were very confident. Coffee? He smirked. Sure. We ate with small talk at first, the clatter of forks like tiny bells. Lila checked her phone under the table and said, we're meeting a realtor later. The fork paused in my hand. I do not know why that sentence made something turn in my chest. Perhaps because the realtor was a word that tasted like a claim. Ethan said, yeah, Dad, we need something bigger. Closer to downtown. I smiled and said that downtown is bright at night and loud in the morning, but I expected they would like that. Lila said, and we'll manage it ourselves. She squeezed his hand, then glanced at me with a spark that wanted a reaction. I let the spark fizz out on its own. Then I placed the envelope on the table between the salt and the syrup. What's that? Ethan asked. A letter, I said. From who? Lila asked, voice light but edges sharp. From your university, I said. Addressed to me. About you. He raised a brow, the same way he did when he was 5 and caught me hiding his birthday gift in the coat closet. He said, what now? Read it, I said, and slid the envelope towards him. He took it with a careless grip as if it weighed nothing. He unfolded the paper. I watched his eyes move left to right. I watched the muscles of his jaw hesitate. Lila leaned in. Her sunglasses came off. Behind them, her eyes were clear and calculating, but now they narrowed, not in disdain but in confusion. Ethan swallowed. He read again. He whispered, anonymous donor, like a person tasting a flavor and not recognizing it at first. He kept reading until he reached the signatures, and then he looked up at me with a face I had not seen since he was a boy who had broken a toy and wanted me to fix it. Is this a joke? He said. No, I said. It is a thank you note. For who? He asked too fast. For me, I said, and took a sip of coffee. Lila laughed, a small, brittle sound. You? She said. But how? I did not answer her. I looked at my son. There are many roads, Ethan, I said. Some are loud. Some you do not see because they are under your feet. When you said last night that no one got you there, I tasted silence. I thought perhaps you should taste truth. He opened his mouth and then closed it. He looked from me to the letter and back again. His ears went pink, the way they always did when he was embarrassed and trying not to show it. Lila set her jaw. It doesn't change anything, she said quickly. as if saving balance by speaking first. He did the work, I nodded. He did, I said. He carried his own books. He wrote his own papers. He earned his grades. This is not about stealing his work. This is about the ground. I tapped the table gently. Ground is not glamorous, but try standing without it. People imagine the moment of reveal as a drum roll and a snap. In my house, it was a small, quiet sound, the letter sliding back into its envelope. Ethan stared at his plate. His pancakes had cooled. The syrup had formed a thin, shiny skin. He said, "Why didn't you tell me?" He spoke like someone trying to hold a note steady while his throat shakes. "Because your mother asked me to carry you to a moment," I said. "Not to wave flags as we went. She wanted the moment to feel like yours. A gift is not a gift when it cannot stop talking about itself." He touched the edge of the envelope with one fingertip, as if it might jump. He whispered, "Mom," and then shut his eyes like he felt something move through him from a very far room. When he opened them, a film of water made his lashes darker. He looked younger. Lila shifted in her chair. The air changed. Pride can live in a room like thick smoke. One open window, one letter, and it thins. I did not scold him for the night before. Scolding is for small things. This was a big thing, and big things ask for stillness. I only said, "You can keep the letter if you like." Sometimes when people walk forward too fast, they forget to look down at what they're walking on. He nodded, then shook his head. I don't know what to say," he said. "Try thank you," Lila said in a high, tense voice that meant she was trying to find a foothold. He gave her a brief glance, then looked back at me. "Thank you," he said. 2 words, very small. In their smallness was the weight of chairs unscraping across invisible floors inside us. If the story ended there, it would be neat. But life is not neat. It's a page with coffee stains and torn corners and notes in the margin. After breakfast, when I was clearing plates, Ethan hovered in the doorway to the kitchen like he used to do when he was 10 and wanted to tell me something he wasn't sure I would like. "Dad," he said, "about last night." I stopped, turned, held his eyes with mine. "I should not have said what I said," he tried. "Not like that. Not in front of everyone." I waited. He swallowed. "Not at all," he added finally, and there it was, the harder truth. He rubbed the back of his neck. But things have been strange in my head. I thought being independent meant cutting strings. I dried my hands, took a slow step. "We are not strings," I said. "We are roots. You cut strings to fly a kite. You keep roots to keep a tree alive." He did not smile, but something unclenched in his shoulders. "Lila thinks," he began, then stopped. "I do not like when people blame their worst parts on those who stand near them. We are responsible for the words our mouths choose. What do you think?" I asked gently. He nodded, looking at the letter as if it were a mirror where he could see a better angle of himself. "I think I was wrong," he said. Later that day, he and Lila went to meet their realtor. I made no comment. I have learned that you cannot drag a person away from a decision they think is success. You can only set out signposts. I decided to set one more. In my study, there is an old safe behind a row of books. It is not a dramatic secret. Any patient eye would see that those books are always misaligned because the safe door opens often. Inside the safe are documents that hum with quiet power. The house deed, the store's partnership agreement, the insurance policies, the file with scholarship receipts, letters, transfer proofs, Amina's will, my will. I took out 2 papers and put them on the desk. One was the deed with my name. The other was a copy of a deed that had no name yet, because it was for a small apartment I had quietly purchased years ago when prices dipped, and grief had made me think constantly about safety nets. My plan had been to hold it for him until he showed the kind of steadiness that makes roofs trust a person. I ran my fingers along the edge of the paper and thought about how some lessons come from gifts, and some from weight. I chose weight again. That evening, the family gathered again, smaller this time, the noise softer, the joy kinder. Ethan arrived late, without Lila. He carried the envelope in his jacket pocket like a passport. He asked if we could talk. We went out to the porch where the air smelled of mint because I had planted it thick around the steps. He put his hands in his pockets and rocked on his heels. "They offered us a place," he said. "Lila loves it," I nodded. He waited, then said, "I don't think it's time yet." The sentence reached me like a boat coming into view slowly through fog. "No," I said. He shook his head. "I don't want to run just to pretend I'm flying." He took out the letter, smoothed it. "I thought independence meant never having anyone to thank. I see now that it means knowing how to thank." He looked up at me. "I was cruel last night. I let that word sit between us, and then I turned it." "You were thoughtless," I said. "Cruelty wants to hurt. Thoughtlessness forgets who gets hurt. The fix for both is attention." We stood there a long time watching light from the neighbor's window make a square on the fence. A moth walked the edge of that square like a tightrope. He said, "What would Mom say?" I smiled, tasting salt and sugar at the same time, a flavor you only get when memory and present shake hands. She would say, "Be kind, be brave, be grateful." She would kiss your forehead. And she would threaten me if I didn't make you eat fruit. He laughed, a clean, young laugh I had heard less of lately. He wiped his eyes. "I miss her," he said. "Me too," I said. "Every day." The word every is heavy when it is true. We held it up together. You might ask where Lila is in all this. She returned the next afternoon with a bouquet and an apology that sounded like something scripted by someone who had studied apologies for effect. I accepted it because acceptance is easier than arguing over sincerity. She said, "I didn't know." And I told her, "We don't always need to know to be kind." She nodded as if I had signed a truce. I do not know if their engagement will last. Lovers who build on applause do not like when the audience goes home. But I do not decide that. I only decide how to stand in my own doorway. The letter did not change the past. It only placed a small lamp there and turned it on. In the weeks that followed, Ethan came by more. He asked about the store. He asked how to read bank language. He asked for the recipe for the cardamom tea. He tried and failed to braid a scarf to make me laugh. He learned it slowly. He began, all on his own, to volunteer Saturday mornings with the newer students at his old department, showing them how to structure a study plan. He did not do it for credit. He did it because gratitude, once it wakes, does not want to go back to sleep. He told them to write thank you notes to people who had helped them. He told them to sign their names in full under those notes. He told them because the boy who had declared, "No one got me here," had discovered the pleasure of saying, "Many did." One afternoon he came to my study, nervous. "Dad," he said, "I want to ask you something. And it's okay if the answer is no." I braced softly, because that is how you receive a large request without making it feel larger. "Ask," I said. He held up a card from his department. "They want to name a small scholarship after Mom," he said. "Just one student a year. I want to contribute. I want to put my name there too, but smaller." He laughed at himself, a good-humored laugh this time. "Maybe not smaller, equal." He looked at me. "Will you sign with me?" The surprise did not knock me over because I had already begun to see the new shape of him. I took a pen. "Yes," I said. "We will sign together." On the day we signed, the dean's assistant met us with tea in china cups I had seen in that office before. The dean shook our hands and said something about circles closing and opening again. The foundation rep who had co-signed my earlier letter smiled with the kind of warmth money cannot fake. Ethan leaned over the desk and wrote his name carefully, as if it were a bridge he did not want to wobble. I added mine. The assistant slipped the papers into a folder and said, "You know, your father once asked that we make sure you never felt the weight of this." Ethan looked at me, eyes bright, half proud, half sad. "I felt it anyway," he said. "Just later." We laughed, the sound like rain on dry ground. That evening, we went to the lake. It was something Amina loved, a place where the breeze smells faintly of pine and the water nods at the shore like an old friend greeting another. We took bread. We fed ducks. We sat on a bench that remembered our weight. Ethan said, "Do you forgive me?" I said, "I did before you asked." He said, "That's cheating." I said, "No, that's love." We watched the sun make the water look like it was holding fire without burning. "What will you do next?" I asked. He smiled. Not the sharp smile from the party, but a quiet one, like the end of a good sentence. "I'll work," he said, "and I'll keep my head down, but not my heart." For those waiting for the grand revenge, the spectacle, the public humiliation, I will say this. Sometimes the deepest revenge is not revenge at all, but revelation. The letter was not a weapon. It was a mirror. It did not draw blood. It drew breath. Had I wanted, I could have pulled out deeds and bank documents and speeches. I could have shamed him in front of the same people who clapped for him. But shame burns quick and leaves ash. Truth settles and grows. The next time he stood in a room full of people, he spoke differently. He said, "My father kept a promise. My mother lit the path. I walked it, and I forgot for a moment that the path is the point." Then he raised his glass and found my eyes in the crowd, and did not look away. As for Lila, she learned that applause is an echo. She decided whether she liked the sound of real words spoken in small rooms with no audience. I will not say what she chose because that is her story, and I am telling mine. I will only say that when she came by later with a bag of groceries and asked how to steep cardamom correctly, I showed her. People change or they do not. The kettle does not care as long as it gets to sing. Sometimes at night, I unfold the letter and read it again, not because I need the proof of what I did, but because I enjoy the shape of those three signatures side by side. The dean, the chair, the foundation rep. Three hands that, whether they meant to or not, wrote the word together. I placed the letter back with our papers, and I touched the frame with Amina's note. Remember, we are building a road. Somewhere. I think, she hums her small tune of approval. Somewhere I think she braids a scarf in a room with better light. I do not believe in many miracles, but I believe in the common miracle of people learning, slowly, painfully, beautifully, to be better than the loudest room makes them. If you've stayed with me this far, perhaps you are on your couch or in your car or at a cafe that smells like cinnamon. Tell me where you are listening from, because stories make their own rooms, and I want to know what the walls of yours look like. Tell me if you've ever held your breath at a party. Tell me if you have ever raised a glass when your heart wanted to throw it. Tell me if you have ever opened a letter and found that the past had signed its name and finally let you read it. Some letters arrive late, some truths walk slowly. Both still arrive. I will say one last thing. When my son shouted, "This success is mine, not yours," he meant to claim a crown. He did claim one in a way. Not the crown of pride, but the crown that sits on a person's head when they finally understand how to bow. The morning after, a letter came and placed a hand on his shoulder and turned him so he could see the road under him. The road his mother blessed and his father paved and his own feet wore smooth. He could not believe who signed it. He did not expect the dean's name, the board's, the foundation's. But the signature he truly needed to see was his own, written in the space that says, "I acknowledge." He signed with his next steps. And now, if this story touched you, if it made you think of your own letters, your own quiet raises of a glass, your own roads, do me a favor, share, comment, and subscribe. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me who paved your road and who you're paving it for next.